Hey guys and girls, thanks for tuning into episode 7. My guest today is Austin Stout. So for those that don't know, he's my mentor. This episode was great, talking about hormonal fluctuations and hormonal cascades after or post dieting or post show. So it's going to be really handy for those that are coming out of season B because they couldn't compete and moving into season A, and just some considerations. Hopefully you enjoy this episode as much as I did recording it. As always, please feel free to share and like and tag.
Nutrition, lifestyle, and PED education. This is the Elite Strength Podcast with Aaron Scoffey.
Welcome, guys and girls, to the Elite Strength Podcast, up to episode 7 here with my mentor, which is going to be quite exciting on my end. Anyway, I'm probably going to be more excited than most of you. Mr. Austin Stout from the US. Austin, how you going, buddy?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for jumping on, dude. You're my first international guest, so this will be pretty cool.
6:08 p.m. here, so we're a little far apart.
Yeah, we have 8:08 a.m. here the next day.
Right. Very good.
It's funny because you beat Joe to the punch. I said to Joe that I'll put him on the podcast because he's keen to jump on, and I'm like, yeah, man, no stress, but he's all over the shop, so I don't know what's going on with him.
Yeah, well, it worked out. The timing worked out good for us, surprisingly. Yeah. So that's good.
Yeah, I didn't even know what time I'd have to get up for Joe. Well, I think I can do it in the afternoon because it'll be early morning for him. I think our 3 o'clock's about his 7 a.m. So of the same day. So it might not be too bad, to be honest. Yeah. Anyway, we'll see how we go. But anyway, man, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you've been up to, how the lockdown is for you over there, and how this COVID pandemic is quickly for you. And then we'll get into our little topic.
Yeah, sure. So, I coach. So obviously I coach a variety of folks, Gen Pop competitors, even some strength athletes. My business is really varied these days. I do a lot of different stuff, which I enjoy. I think it allows me to, be exposed to more experiences and help me along the way. So I do coach a variety of competitive and non-competitive clients, functional health clients, have my mentorship program now, which has really taken off in the last couple of years. It was something I was doing about 3 years ago. I didn't really advertise it. It was kind of like a, hey, can you help me type of thing? And then everyone's like, well, you should put this out as a service. And I did. And, I'm glad that I did it. Podcasts, do a lot of speaking, which this year we've done a couple speaking like seminars and things. Last year was kind of,
of course.
The situation.
Yeah, for sure.
And then content, try to put out other content stuff. It's just it's constant. It's all the time. So
basically at your laptop all day. And if not at your laptop, you're in your barn or your garage or your shed or whatever you guys call it in the US to train.
Yep. So I don't have to leave much. I do have my gym is out back, office in the house. I can get groceries delivered to the house. So
the definition of a hermit.
So we're good. Yeah.
Yeah, man. And what's your background? Nutrition from memory, master's nutrition?
No, it's a bachelor's. I have a bachelor's in nutrition.
Yeah.
Originally I was going to school for some kind of healthcare field, whether it be something on like the medical side of like nursing, doctor, something, or physical therapy side of things.
Yep.
And I just, in my eyes, like physical therapy was appealing to me, but at the time they just changed it to an 8-year degree. And the idea of going to school for 8 years for that.
Yeah, stuff that.
Yeah. So, and my family, pretty much everyone in my family were business owners and really hardworking people and stuff. And so I started personal training in the gym, like a lot of people, right? Started with that, seeing the one-on-one. And then at the time, this was pre-2010, right? So this is like
a while back.
Yeah, this is like almost OG status, right? Pre-Instagram.
Yeah, exactly. It is literally pre-Instagram.
Yeah, right. It was just barely, but we were before. And then some people, obviously, the need for nutrition, and people wanted to pay. Okay, so maybe this is something. And I knew at the time there were a few people kind of offering online coaching, but it was a few. I mean, we're talking the amount of people that I knew doing it, I could count on one hand, pretty much.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So I thought, I'm broke and I'm young. Why not? Let's try it.
What's the worst that can happen, right?
Right. So basically I've pretty much been self-employed my entire adult life, and just kept continuing to build my business. My biggest obstacle really was just my age when I was younger. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
just like that.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like that age barrier and that trust barrier with the clientele. And that slowly over time as building not only reputation and results, but also just my getting older, it helped. And then that became less and less of an issue. And by 2000, probably, because I did that part-time, I helped my dad at his business part-time for some extra side cash. But by probably 2013, I was full-time. Coaching was my only job, or maybe 2012 even, might have been 12. So been coaching probably 12 years, full-time probably 9 years, I guess, maybe.
Pretty much, a while.
And, been a while.
And how are you enjoying it all? I guess if you were to look back, would you have done exactly what you did, or would you have changed something?
Well, I mean, maybe, I suppose I could say I might change things and sped up the process. But at the time, like, we didn't have podcasts. We didn't have mentorship programs. We didn't have, information was forums pretty much. And as we know, it was literally just people being science experiments on themselves, right? And trying to see.
Exactly right. Yeah. Try it on myself. If it works, I'm going to try it with someone else.
So now, had I known things, I could have expedited the process and sped it up. But on the same token, I am grateful that I do have a ton of experience in so many different things and over the years. So that helps.
Yeah. And so you've also competed in bodybuilding?
Yeah, I've only ever done bodybuilding, never anything else.
How many shows have you done?
Man, I've quite a few, 12 maybe.
Oh yeah, cool. So definitely quite a few. Definitely a lot of experience in that then.
Yeah, I do them in spurts. I'll do like a couple in a year, take a couple years off type of thing. And
of course. Yeah.
I competed as a teen. So I actually I actually did like teenage bodybuilding.
Yeah, nice.
I've done. My goal now is to compete as a heavyweight bodybuilder, open heavyweight, which is in the US is 225 basically and below. And I've competed now as a lightweight, a welterweight, a middleweight, and a light heavyweight. So it's
right. So you've basically done all the classes and you're ready to go to the next step.
Way up. That's my end game though, because I don't want to be that guy. It's like 45 years old, like trying to, eat 7 calories a day. I
was going to say, are you competing more so just for the experience and the joy of wanting to compete and liking to compete, or are you actually looking to go pro and get a pro card? And obviously you want to be the best that you can be, don't get me wrong, but is that intent to be a pro, or is it just so that you just want to better yourself each time you get on stage?
Yeah. So originally I had zero idea of genetics capability of myself. I just didn't know. Now I've come to, obviously, I think if you've competed for 4 to 5 years, you have a pretty good realization of what your genetics are at that point. Like you should, you know what I mean? I'm not delusional, and I've coached so many different people that I understand like what my body does compared to what a higher tier genetic body does. Now could I become pro? If I did, it would be in a master's situation. That would be good.
Yeah. Gotcha.
That would be, now I don't think it's out of the realm. I think that it's definitely a possibility if I continue to,
look to do that later on. Yeah.
But like even as a heavyweight, I have no delusions I'm going to walk out to, NPC nationals and win or anything. It's just at that point, it's a genetic game.
Fair. No, that's fair, man. Like I said, so a lot of people, even down here, like I was saying off camera, a lot of the comps have been cancelled, but I do wonder how many people were going for that pro card type scenario or versus just wanting to be out, especially those that have, competed a few times. Like it's almost like they probably would have got closer to their pro card in the first 4 or 5 shows versus probably the back end of 3 or 4 shows. So yeah, depending on age and genetics and all that sort of stuff. So
sure. And some people at some point will just get worse because their bodies just,
they beat exactly
worn out. But we joke, we get those people that, because the NPCs are a big federation here, right? Our amateur federation. You get the people that put on their Instagram profile, they're 3-time nationally qualified, right? It's
dude, we have those here.
I'm like 12 time. I'm like 12 time nationally qualified.
Yeah. And should add it to your bio.
But at the same time, and I've won overalls at shows, more than once, and still I still know I'm going to be second call out.
Yeah, for best. Sure. Yeah. Hey man, nothing wrong with being realistic, right? It's kind of like, as long as you're enjoying it, having fun, and you end up looking better or you're heavier or whatever it is, but like it's a win, right?
Yeah.
I guess that leads us into our actual topic, right? So hormonal consequences of frequent competing or just frequent dieting. So probably something that's not spoken about a lot. I think more so, especially with post-comp, people tend to talk about the dieting situation post-comp and, how to come out of a comp prep as healthy as possible in terms of dieting and that sort of stuff. But they don't really talk about the hormonal side of things and what's going on, whether they just don't talk about it or don't know. Could be a bit of both, but definitely something that would be interesting to a lot of people, especially now, considering we've just had the shows cancelled, whether those, hormonal consequences have really sort of taken effect, being 8 weeks out versus being, at comp or a week out. Definitely something to probably talk about and be interesting to hear.
Sure. Yeah. So there's multiple sides to this. So I think there's genuinely people that they don't understand what they need to do to stay healthy and recover. And there is that, but there's also the crowd that is very much just a mental block. Like they're afraid to gain weight. They're afraid to get fat. They're afraid to do all of the things and not only are they afraid to do the things, but maybe they do them for a short time and then they become discouraged about the way they look. And then they go right back into that diet or that prep. Right. Because and of course, the kind of the general theme that I see is, because I'm doing a lot of these functional health cases, is you get away with it a couple times, right? You can do it once. Sure. You able to do it the second time, and then they're like, "Oh, we're on prep 3, and my body's not doing anything that it should be doing, right?" Yeah. And maybe they get away with it once. Second show, they don't really recover between the first and the second one. They do it again, but they have to push harder on the second one, right? And then by the third one, they're like, "Wow, this is brutal."
They've got nothing else to give.
Right.
Yeah.
Nothing's working. So, and I think when we talk about metabolic and hormonal adaptations, I think the term and the basics of it I think it's relatively understood as far as we do get some metabolic slowdown. We get some thyroid downregulation. Our sex hormones downregulate when we are, basically starved, right? So we know these things happen. And there is some research on this stuff. There was a couple actual bodybuilding contest prep studies. And now, albeit they were done on natural bodybuilders, but they still showed what kind of downregulations you would see. Yeah. And of course, if you're enhanced, you can replace those things, exogenously. Yes. But after the prep, you still have to recover your thyroid after you come off the meds. And there's still a recovery process, right? Yeah. Also we're dealing with other things like leptin, for example, that we don't see. We're not checking leptin on our lab.
No, of course not. Yeah.
Right. And just general mistakes that I see these folks, their off seasons are, and anyone that's competed or dieted or gotten to a lean body fat, they've seen this. their hunger signaling is off, right?
Yep.
They're that endless pit. Like if you take a bite of something you shouldn't, you can't stop eating. You feel all of this is our body's way of saying, hey, we want to return to homeostasis. Feed us, get us fat as quick as possible, right?
Yeah. So, and basically so that we can hold on to this fat so we don't have to do this shit again.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So the problem is, yes, okay, maybe these folks they're getting their lab work done and they look semi-recovered on the labs and it looks okay, but their hunger signaling is still not right. Their relationship with food in the process is still not back to,
I was going to say that's a big one, I think. Yeah.
And they go back into it again. Right.
Yeah.
So we're seeing it's a compounding thing and it ends up compounding, over and over again. And then you're ending up with, actual adaptations that are a lot more difficult to fix. So what kind of stuff, because this is like 50% of my business is dealing with this stuff. So
this works nicely. So in terms of like leptin and that sort of stuff, I guess what's going on there, I guess sort of explain what's happening, sort of post-show, crazy dieting down. Like what happens to both leptin and ghrelin, and I guess how does that affect coming out of a show, like you said,
Sure.
getting those hunger signals a little bit, like how do we get them back to a relatively normal feel? And I guess if there is a time frame, I imagine it's different for everybody, but I guess what time frame are we working in to get these things happening? You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah. So with any adaptation, how severe it becomes is really determined by two things. What was kind of your health status before you started the diet, right?
Yes.
If you were already in a bad spot, then of course it's going to be worse, right?
Yeah.
Now,
100%.
the second part would be how far away from your natural set point are you? And I kind of try to tell this to people like, well, females especially, how many women do you know that if they just ate around maintenance comfortably and they worked out casually would walk around with a 6-pack of boxed out glues?
Yeah. Right.
Like pretty much it's going to be, the percentage is going to be really, really small.
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
So when you're getting so far away from what your body likes to maintain, that's where those adaptations are creating more and more and more and more. Right.
Yeah. For sure.
So the further away you are from what you can call your natural kind of set point, the more you can expect it to affect you, right? Yeah. Post show. Sure. You're seeing leptin's dictated by, it's somewhat influenced by food, but it's really dictated by body fat, a lot of it, right? So, your leptin levels are going to be difficult to return until you put fat on them.
Put your body fat on, right? Yep.
And your ghrelin's a little tricky. So ghrelin moves around a little bit more than leptin as far as, the signaling. Ghrelin gets tricky here because generally as food intake goes up, ghrelin is supposed to come down, and that's kind of like how it works. But ghrelin's also working in conjunction with leptin here, and it's like, hey, keep signaling for us. Yeah. We need to get fatter.
We need to get fat. Yeah. We need more food.
So you get these really bizarre, and anyone that's been in this situation will know 100% what I'm talking about. This really bizarre symptom where you could literally fill your stomach full of food, but you still want to eat.
Yeah, you're still hungry, even though you're full. You're still hungry.
You could fill it. You could fill it to the point where you are basically someone could like roll you across the room. You're like, but you still want to eat, right? Yeah. You're still getting this signal. So that's ghrelin. That's like, hey, let's get this person fat. We need to get fatter, right?
Gotcha.
So that's where these schools of thought about reverse dieting post-show come into play, right? You have the one camp that's like, hey, we need to just regain body fat as quick as possible, go right back to, maintenance.
Yeah.
Don't even worry about it, right? Mm-hmm. Then you have the other camp that's more slower approach. So in theory, the camp that wants to go faster, it makes sense. Okay, it does make sense, but the problem is that we're dealing with a human being and we're dealing with emotions also.
Yeah, which aren't very logical, right?
Right. So to say, and then the other issue is your maintenance is not the same. You can't like say, okay, I ended my off season at 6,000 calories and I ended my prep at 2,000. Like you're not going to shoot back up to 6,000. Your maintenance has changed.
Changed 100%. Right? Yep.
Right. So that idea is, yes, it makes sense, but it's way too simplistic, right? To work.
Yeah. Okay? Good job. Yep.
So we need to think, my goal is like, how can I get this person back to homeostasis as quick as possible while also kind of working with their personality and their mentality? And I'll tell them straight up, like, if I know it's someone that doesn't mind moving a little bit quicker and adding a little bit of body fat or whatever, I said, hey, we're going to get you back to maintenance or back to homeostasis as quick as possible. And they're on board. And the other person, we're not all about that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we're going to feel nice and slow.
Now, here's the thing that's kind of important to explain, though, is let's say your peak off season, one person's gone a little faster, because once you've gone faster and you've reached homeostasis, then we slow down, right? We just creep. Yep. We're creeping up from there. Whereas the other, so basically we have these two lines that are like going like this, one's going quicker, but they're going to meet in the same place.
Same spot. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. They're going to meet in the same spot. You're basically going to end up with the same body fat at the end of the day.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Either way, yeah, you will still end up at the same point. It's just how fast you're going to get there.
Right. I mean, you're still going to end up in the same spot, and relative to like making progress, you're probably going to make similar progress in both situations over the long, extended period of time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So really a lot of that is just going to boil down to mentally what the person can handle and what's going to keep them on track and keep them happy and not drive them off the rails. And then also expenditure, like what are they doing? How much are they training? How much cardio are they doing? Right. So and that's, as far as like reverse dieting, like or post show, you have to figure all that in, because sometimes, man, if they're doing tons of activity, I would rather let their body rest, so I'm trying to get that activity down.
Yeah. Like as minimal as possible.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of ways to go about it, and it's going to really boil down to kind of obviously context, but also the person's personality and their tendencies and stuff. But let's fast forward. Let's say post show, like what would we see post show? Like what kind of adaptations we're actually seeing? Well, we see, so people would know, what we're going to see, typical stuff would be, in females and males, if you're not enhanced, you're going to see lower sex hormones, right? Yep. You're going to see testosterone suppressed. Females, a lot of the time with females, many of them will lose their menstrual cycle somewhere in the prep, right?
Yep.
If they don't, there's a few that keep it, but really the ones that get pretty lean normally don't keep it. A lot of them will lose it. So with females, what you're seeing there is really simple concept. Any of you know functional stuff, you'll know what it is. It's basically pregnenolone steal or cortisol steal. And all that is, it's very simple idea. We have pregnenolone branching off into DHEA and progesterone.
Yep.
What's happening is our body is skipping progesterone production and it's preferring the cortisol production, which is further down the chain, right? So body gets stressed, cortisol goes up. Body's like, we don't want progesterone. We need cortisol instead to deal with stress, because cortisol is really designed as an acute stress. We need it, right?
Like, of course.
Away.
Yeah,
right
100%.
Away.
Yeah.
You can live without a period. You die with zero cortisol.
Cortisol. Yeah. It's funny trying to explain that to people.
you literally die because cortisol's balancing your blood sugar. It's helping with, aldosterone, balance your adrenals,
Yep.
Right. So women, progesterone tanks, women, estrogen's kind of funky in women. Sometimes you'll see if their body's really stressed out and they maybe have some sluggish GI and things like that, you'll actually see estrogen dominance because they're not clearing estrogen.
Yeah.
Or you might see the opposite. You might just see them like completely tank.
Yeah. Tank and crash. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So, but in any case, their sex hormones are going to be garbage after the show.
I guess people know. I was going to say on the back of that. Sorry. What is it then? What can you do, or what as a coach, what can be done to help sort of bring that back, bar nutritional interventions like, increasing fat intake and, just total energy intake? Is there, I guess, natural over-the-counter type supplementation that assists in bringing that back? Is it, they, off the back of bloods, do they potentially need like an estrogen supplementation to bring that back? Like, what is it that we're looking at as coaches to try and bring, that aspect back?
Sure. So with progesterone, because one of the quickest things, we want to get their cycle back, right? We want to get that regulated, right? So with progesterone, really, really simple supplement we use is chasteberry or Vitex, right? It's depending on if you get a good standardized form. We'll use about 400 milligrams a few times a day is kind of where we go with that. And what we're doing is we're basically stimulating luteinizing hormone production, which in turn is going to restart
everything else off. Yeah,
progesterone, right? Yeah. And there's a couple now as far as like test and estrogen go on that access. I'll tell you what, there's a supplement that I use here in the States called Jumpstart. New Ethics makes this Jumpstart, and that's more geared towards natural testosterone production, and we aromatize into estrogen from there.
Yep.
So on and so forth. So I might use that, but it really depends on how they feel. I might just say, let's rest you as much as possible, and you're gonna get it back, type of thing.
Yeah, for sure.
So that the progesterone portion, especially, you can jumpstart with the Vitex or chasteberry. Okay. And then think about the lowest hanging fruit in terms of stress. So everyone's like, raise food. That's fine. But what's actually, the food is having an effect, sure. But what's actually causing the most stress to your body?
Yeah, of
is
course,
it the lack of food, or is it the fact that you're fucking hammering the shit out of the training and the cardio?
I was going to say, yeah, exactly right. The actual expenditure side of things.
Right. So in my goal with a lot of people, if they're low expenditure and low food, then I'm going to go at the food first. Yep, but if they're low food and high expenditure, I'm going to add a little bit of food, but I'm going to get that expenditure down as quick as I can.
For sure. Yeah.
Right.
Fair.
So we're talking anything that's really intensive, that's going to give you a pretty sympathetically driven response. So like HIIT cardio, right? Yep. So, training, basically what I'll do with a lot of people is when we'll back off that peak week or that final week training, we're backing off all the submaximal, like clearing inflammation and things. I'll just leave them on it. I'll leave them on it for 3-4 weeks post show. Easy. Right.
Yep.
Just to get that sympathetic drive down as quick as we can, get that cortisol to start normalizing, and also get the stress off the body. Right.
Yeah, for sure.
So really don't just think about food. And I think people make this mistake a lot. They're like, oh, they're motivated post show. And a lot of that's just like this grandiosity because of the dopamine and shit from, they're like, oh, off season, here's my new goals. It's a transition,
sure.
Right?
Yeah. It's literally what you said. It's a transitional phase. Yeah. Exactly.
It's a transition. So they're excited about it, and that's fine. And I get it. But at the same time, I'm going to flip the script on them a little bit and say, hey, maybe let's go a little more moderate with the food, but let's get all of that activity back in check, because
for sure,
we're not going to be doing all that shit the whole off season. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly right. That's the whole point. It's on season, extra expenditure for a reason.
Right. It's literally just expenditure. Like we're burning calories. That's all. Yeah. That's all you're doing.
Exactly.
So let's get all that in check. And then that's going to make the biggest difference, because then sleep's going to start to improve. Right.
Well,
and then
exactly right. Exactly. That whole cyclical effect of what's going on. It's like, get your menstrual cycle back and right. Everything else seems to fall into place.
And guess what? You're going to make better progress if your body functions better. That's just the thing. Like,
who would have thought?
People like it kills me when it's like, it's wasting time. Like, no, listen, a body that functions better responds better. Like how could you argue that statement? Right.
Well, yeah, I completely agree. It's pure stupidity in that aspect.
Yeah. So that's kind of how I view like expenditure versus food in terms of raising it. And of course, be careful. I'm not saying if you're on the extreme side and you're doing 2 hours of cardio a day, you probably shouldn't pull it down to 0 right off the bat, because you're just going to get fat.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. You got to have some sort of expenditure in there.
Right. Be reasonable about it, but just try to bring the intensity down.
Of course. Makes sense.
So that's kind of immediate post-show stuff. And then, kind of time frame wise on the lab works and thing like that, I'm looking 6 to 8 weeks post show. I should see if we did everything right, just like I said, and we were diligent,
Yep.
6 to 8 weeks post show, I should see at least decent lab work, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So then I guess in terms of lab work, would you get lab work, let's say like peak week type scenario, and then, 6 to 8 weeks post show and that sort of stuff? Like what are we comparing these new labs at 6 to 8 weeks to? Is it, labs at the start of a prep, halfway through a prep, end of a prep type scenario?
Yeah. Ideally, our goal is to return to a baseline. So I'm probably going to compare them to a previous baseline, right?
Yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah, and that's going to make the most sense to me, is I'm going to compare them to whatever our previous baseline is, because that's another reason that people get in trouble is they recover to a barely clinical type of range, but then the problem is they're still a lot worse than they were before.
Yeah, they're inside the ranges for the doctors, but they're not inside the ranges for what we need or where we want them to be. Yeah.
Right. So, and look, you might get that first set of labs and there's still room for improvement, and that's fine. And we'll keep working it for another 6 to 8 weeks, and we'll recheck. And then by that time, if we're 3 or 4 months in, your labs are going to be pretty normal. Now, what's not necessarily normal is some people it takes a few months to even just feel 100% after a show. It can,
for sure.
Legitimately, if you're pushing hard. And this isn't the okay to go back and do it again, right? This is the mistake that we're seeing. So think of it this way. If however long it takes you to recover from an acute stressor, which acute stressor in this case would be prep, right? Yeah. Prep can be, let's say prep is 16 to 24 weeks. We're like giving you a range.
Yeah.
So if it takes you 12 weeks post show to get to pretty normal, you should think that you're probably going to want to take at least double that time or more staying normal before you even think about
prepping again.
Coming
right? Yeah, well, I guess then the question off the back of that would be like we were saying here, like WBFF and IFBB shows are basically being cancelled. So for season B. So that takes us to season A next year, which I think is about April. Those that are wanting to do, like they couldn't obviously do season B, want to move to season A next year. What's the go there? If we're talking about, let's say 12 weeks of a rebound to come back to normal, and then looking at another 12 weeks to stay normal, that's 6 months gone. That's effectively ready to go into next prep, or if not, you're already inside the next prep for season A next year. So on a back-to-back season, like how do we go about that?
Good question. Well,
or is it just advisable to say no?
It might be, but I'm going to think about, okay, so how close to ready were we? Because if we got halfway through prep, if we were only halfway through prep and we were kind of mini cut cleanup phase type of lean, you're good. Like you're probably going to be fine from there to do a short rebound and finish, right?
Yeah.
But if you were, unfortunately, the reality is if you were like 2 weeks out, and I'm probably not going to advise you to go, to do your 12 weeks and then go right back into it.
Because they canceled the shows 8 weeks out. So everyone, I guess, would have been 8 weeks out, give or take. So wherever they were for their 8 weeks out, depending on, what category they were competing in and stuff. But I'm just thinking in terms of, those that are going to want to do back-to-back seasons because they couldn't do this season, I guess what's the go? Being 8 weeks, not so much 2 weeks, but not so much 10 to 12 weeks out. It's like that, that medium time, like right in there. I guess what is it that we would look at?
Yeah, it is a good question. I'm going to defer back to how far away from their normal set point are they?
Yeah, fair.
Because sometimes the last 8 weeks might be a total grind for some person, where another person, they might only really have to grind for 3.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So assess that. And the thing is, that's frustrating for one, but the second portion of that is the last thing you want to do is do all that work and then go into the second prep or the rescheduled prep, and then your body not responding, you just be twice as pissed off.
For sure. That makes complete sense.
Right. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, it's a tough situation. I dealt with that with some people last year. I'll tell you, I can give you a couple examples. So last year I had a few shows that were canceled for people, right? And they were they were summer. We're going to say summer. So around June or July, right?
Yes.
We got pretty close. So we got to maybe May or June for these people. Yep. And then they wanted to compete again this year. So we got to about February-ish or so before we needed to prep again, February or March. Both of these people, we made it to the show. It was twice as hard this year to get lean.
Right. Yeah, they just hadn't recovered.
These are males. These are male. These are big males. These are guys that eat a lot of food. And the funny thing is, I reversed them. I reversed them to like 6,500 to 7,000 calories. Blood work was great, everything. But as soon as we started to try to prep again, their body did not respond the same.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. That's interesting.
So here's what I speculate. I don't know. I don't think there's any, there might be research on this. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what we're seeing now, especially because fitness and bodybuilding has gotten so kind of popular with all the divisions over the last 10 years or so, is I think really what we're seeing is an epigenetic change in some of these people, right? Yeah. So it's like, and epigenetics is basically, your genetic coding isn't changing, but it's like the gene expression is changing, right? Yeah. So how your body, so think of like the on-off switches. So all these adaptations that we have, like the leptin and the ghrelin and the thyroid and this testosterone and all that shit, it's all changed by on and off switches in the body saying, hey, this is happening. We need to shut this off, turn this on, shut this off, turn this on, shut this off. So I think what we see, especially in these chronic cases, is on an epigenetic level, the body's recognizing this, right?
Yeah,
it's like,
that's what the body does, right?
Right. And our body is brilliant at it. And it says, hey, we've just done this. We need to. So now let's say, I'll paint this picture. You take someone that hasn't competed for 3 years. They're eating, good food. They've got a good starting point for prep. They do their prep. Everything goes smooth, relative to prep.
Yeah.
You take them and you only give them 8 months of 6 or 8 months of off season. They start the off season at the same body fat, the same food, the same everything. Yeah. Guarantee they're not going to respond the same. Yeah. Same blood work, same everything. I guarantee they won't respond the same.
Yeah. Well, it's just that adaptation, right? That's just like the body does adapt. So it's kind of like, I know what I'm doing here. I've been here before. I don't need to do what I did last time. I'm just going to be lazy.
So what's happening is all of those switches that are flipping on and off in order for us to adapt are happening twice as quickly because the body recognizes it. Yeah. So, and maybe that's not the most scientific epigenetic explanation for it, but I had that conversation with somebody last year because we were talking about why some of these functional cases with like female hormones and even in men, some of them were so resistant compared to others. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I truly think if I think about the scenarios, I think about like what these people have actually been through, it makes sense. Yeah. Oh, their body's smart.
Yeah. Well, we do say that the body's an amazing machine, right? So it makes complete sense.
Yeah. So I don't know. Unfortunately, how do you fix that? The question is like, it's like, and I'm going to tell you what's the number one variable there? Time. Yeah. Right. It's time. It's just, time is the variable. Like I could do the same things with two people, but basically I need to convince that person's body that it's okay. Hey, it's okay. We can lose body fat now. You know what I mean? So that's my biggest struggle with a lot of the people, like the hormone cases and stuff. Is, hey, coach, my blood work looks good now. We're ready to go. I said, your blood work just now looks good. Like just now.
Wait until it's good for a while before we can start this again.
So no, we're not ready to go. We gotta stay here.
Well, it's funny how many interventions and stuff we as coaches can put in, but it's at the end of the day, the body will tell you when it's ready. It's kind of like, like that old saying, listen to your body. This is one of those times. It's just like, let's see what happens and check in on it and make sure that, when it's ready, it's ready. Otherwise there's no point.
Yeah. And over time you get a little more intuitive to what you're seeing and when it's ready and stuff, but there's no there's no way to tell because we can't test for this. We can't even, there's nothing we can do to test for these things, right?
Yeah.
We can and that's what's frustrating is because most of these adaptions, and people will say this online, and I just kind of like, you don't understand, is that I don't think they fully understand is that, my thyroid's fine and my sex hormones are fine. And the body can only, according to this study, it can only adapt to this percentage. And I'm like, listen, I'm seeing it right now. It's not working. Or they'll throw out the bullshit of, they're not reporting honestly. They're not tracking correctly. I'm like, yeah, okay, I know that's happening, but that's not what
that's not what the fundamental issue is going on here.
I'm like, that's not what this is. Yeah. And the unfortunate part is we don't have a lot of research on these like chronic adaptions, the adaptions that we know of, because who the fuck's going to volunteer for that?
True. That's exactly right. That's the downside to research, right? Yeah.
It's like, hey, let's batter the shit out of you and beat you into the ground for 5 years and see how long it takes us to fix you.
Yeah. No, that's like I said, there's always a limit to a lot of the research. And I think a lot of people forget that. And then also being realistic on the research. It's like you just said, like who is going to volunteer for that? So how can we actually use the research as an example when we don't have it?
Right. Because there's things like, we had the starvation study. If you remember the old school, I think it was the older starvation study. And we've had similar things like that along the way. But the reality is, if I took a person with a perfectly healthy metabolism and that's never been chronically dieted, I could starve them for a while and nothing bad would happen and they would come right out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
It'd be fine.
Yeah.
It'd be fine. Like they'd be a little sluggish for a while, but they'd be hungry. But I mean, I could recover them, no problem. Yeah. But if I do that to somebody that's been starved 5 or 6 times,
it's a very different story.
Yeah.
No one's going to want to volunteer to be starved 5 or 6 times, right?
So I think that's kind of the landscape that we're dealing with in the industry, because we're seeing, we're getting all the people that have competed multiple times now, that they kind of jumped into the space maybe 5 years ago or so. And now we're seeing the residual of, oh shit, this is not working. And my favorite clients, and I have people think, man, I just want to work with pro competitors, and that's fine. Like I have high level competitors. I have basic clients. Some of my favorite clients are people that are their body is completely unmolested. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
Like it's like and also their mind isn't all fucked up. You know what I mean? Like they do what I say. They're completely moldable. Their body responds. We can do everything right from the start.
Yeah. Definition of like coachable.
Yeah. It's
inside out.
It's ideal. It's a blank slate. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's a blank slate. But so that's kind of what I'm been seeing in the industry. And that's kind of what I wanted to bring up, that whole epigenetic thing, because I think that it is important to see that and understand it, because science isn't going to show us that. And also blood work is not going to show us that. It's
kind of like logical thought processes. It's funny where that anecdote meets that research and then also meets, basic, well, not basic, but I guess a little bit more complex science, whether it be biology, physiology, having an understanding of that and trying to piece it together to make sense of a situation, right?
Yeah. And that's just it. So I have a client. Have you heard of, I think it's Bill Campbell, researcher in the US.
Yeah. Very, very familiar with his work.
Yeah. He's pretty well known. So I have a mentorship client that just got accepted into his program.
Oh yeah. Cool. Yeah. Nice.
I was like, that's awesome. Right. And Bill even says right from the start, he's like, hey, the science is basically just confirming what we already know.
No. Yeah.
Right. But she asked me, because they are allowed to put in suggestions for things like, ideas for research and stuff. I'm like, can you guys do anything on epigenetics? Like, I don't know what, I don't even know what that would do, because I'm not a researcher. I don't know what the equipment is. And like,
for sure. Yeah.
I don't know. So said, I'd be curious to see if there's any way to do that, to take like a battered competitor and see what kind of like things that they can measure. You know what I mean? Whether they need to do like a fucking biopsy or something, like, I don't know.
Or just all of it. Everything you can do, just do it.
So I'll have to see what she comes up with. But we're also seeing, secondary to that, we also see the mental side of things, like people just permanently scarred.
Yeah.
You know, just like it's so bad sometimes where I can present a problem and a solution right in front of the person and literally tell them and show them that they're hurting themselves, and they just won't accept it. Right. How is that any different than being a drug addict?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a fair call.
It is, because what we're dealing with is like some emotional and chemical dependency on this, you know, process and these feelings or whatever. Right.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
So now that's like another obstacle that I have, is that, and other people have, is, hey, we know it's like we can do this protocol to fix this and this. I'm like, but we're dealing with a human being and not an equation, you know?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
So,
yeah.
And that's why things get difficult. So I have to figure that in. I have to figure out what's best case scenario for this person, assuming that they are probably still going to be a high level exercising type of training person forever.
Yeah. Well, it's part of their lifestyle, right?
Right. It's just like, yeah. And it's just like people that are PED users and people that are very reliant on them, and they just can't, they can't disconnect with dosages and things like that. It's like, well, what can we do for this person that's going to give them the best outcome, but still keep them happy?
Or happy and healthy.
Right. So again, we're dealing with a lot of psychological ramifications, and it's sad, man. The sad ones that I see are these, especially, it's more women. Like, women biologically are a lot more susceptible to this shit than men. That's not questionable. I do get functional health cases that are men that are fucked up. I do, but largely the percentage is probably like 80% women, right?
Yeah, right. Yep.
I'm getting these girls that are 21, 22, 23. Their hormones are full-blown menopausal because they've been dieting hard since they were 16 or 17 years old.
Yeah, I was going to say chronic dieting.
They are mentally, they are so warped. Like, they can't, I'm like, listen, you're 22 years old. You have your whole life ahead of you. You are going to permanently cause problems and permanently probably end up on hormone replacement and all this other shit, and permanently affect your fertility, like all this shit, if they're concerned about that. And for what? Yeah, why?
Exactly right. To get on stage and wear a bikini.
And some of them I've straight up told them, I don't like to use, I like to be, empathetic in my approach and try to relate to people. But sometimes I just say, hey, listen, you're not even that good. What the fuck are you doing? You're not even good. Like,
sometimes people need to hear it. No, it's funny because you're not wrong. Some people do need like a reality check, either from themselves or just, in general, like they're putting themselves through all this stuff. And it's kind of like, hey, like, I don't want to, beat around the bush. Like, yeah, you'll look great for you, but you won't look, great to get a pro card, for example, or, something like that. It's like, it's very, very highly unlikely.
Yeah. I'm like, so what is the upside other than their whole, it's sad in the younger girls because they're really impressionable. So now as they're getting into adulthood, their whole identity is wrapped up in this, you know what I mean? And they don't know, like, they can't separate from that. And now their whole identity is this thing, which is destroying them, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So, right.
It's crazy. It's crazy now. It's probably because I get mostly referrals of screwed up people, but now, dude, if I've gotten a competitor that's been competing for more than 5 years and they don't have any problems when I get them, it's a fucking miracle.
Yeah. Well, again, that's, like I said, that's interesting in that, seeing that, show to show, or, prep to prep. Obviously, it can get harder and harder if you're not taking the time in between to hit homeostasis and to hold homeostasis for a period of time. And I wonder if that's where that fundamental flaw is. People hit it and they're like, okay, I'm good. Time to go back.
Right. They feel, and I had a discussion with a girl the other day, used to be my client, and she's doing a lot better. She had some of those issues and she's doing better. And it was a mindset thing, and she used to be a long distance athlete, like cross country, like running, very, very active, always in shape. Right.
Yeah.
So she said to me, I think I want to come back and work with you a little bit longer. Her health had improved, but I think I want to come back and work with you a little bit longer at some point soon, because I'm worried as I get feeling too good that I see myself just going back and doing all the same shit.
Yeah. Reverting back. Yeah.
Right. And it was interesting to me because I'm like, well, yeah. And that's good on you, good on her for recognizing it.
Yeah.
Right?
Identifying. Yeah, for sure.
So that's great for her, but yeah, that's generally what happens. It's time, like time is the variable. Time is the variable for all of this. I had a girl that I prepped this year, hadn't competed for like three and a half years, made some good improvements in her physique, all this stuff. Prep was smooth, dude. It was like, and another one of my clients like, hey, how come my prep's not like hers? So I'm like, for one, you're two different people. But secondly, this is what she did. And this is how much better she looks. This is how lean she got in the prep. This is how much smoother her prep was. And that's why.
Yeah, for sure. It's like, you have that background information and data, right?
That's it. But then of course, and I made, and I'll passive aggressively throw out shit online a lot. And it's not a call out. It's more like I hope I can just grab a few people's attention that are doing the stuff that's screwing themselves up.
Well, yeah, it's not like you're doing it for the wrong reasons. You're doing it to try and help. Right. I think that's the difference with a lot of people, I guess, more so the influencer type on Instagram, especially, pushing like attacks to say it's how they're sort of trying to build their audience or trying to get their clients. It's like, well, you're doing this wrong, but I can fix it, instead of saying, hey, are you doing this wrong? Instead of you are versus you could be.
Right. Yeah. And I like to provoke thought in people too, because if I'm just giving someone a protocol and it's just, then they don't ever establish habits. They're not going to fix anything long term. But I threw out something a while ago. It said, find me a handful of women that walk around lean all the time, that have zero metabolic or hormonal adaptation, or have zero disordered eating thought process.
I was going to say, the other side. Yeah.
I said, find me one. And I said, you won't. Yeah. And if you do, they're really lucky.
Yeah. They're a genetic freak.
and I said, if you do find one, it's probably not a matter of if, but when they have a problem. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm not saying every woman's going to go through some severe, crazy, end up on HRT and, be completely fucked up, but you're not biologically, women don't walk around with 6 packs of boxed out glutes. Like, just
it doesn't happen. No, I completely agree. And it's like, even so, I was going to say, even for guys,
a lot of fucking guys don't.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, I completely agree.
So that's kind of where we're at this point. That's my educational rant. That's my day every day. That's what I deal with, like, every single day.
So people think that, like, down here, that I'm always angry at people. See, I'm not the only one. This is I liaise with people that are the exact same. Like, we're just angry at everybody all the time.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough because I've had people that have come back to me 3 or 4 times, and it takes like the 4th time before they're finally like, I give you an example. One the other day, it said, come back, but the email starts with, well, you were right.
You just screenshot, post it.
The first fucking, yeah, right. Yeah. Marketing, right?
Yeah.
The first fucking line in the email is, well, you were right. And I saw the person's name and I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah, here we go again.
And Yeah, sure shit. Like every time you don't listen and you cut yourself short of that recovery, it's just going to get worse.
Yeah,
We're just gonna have
to makes it worse the next time around.
It's going to get worse. So you can acknowledge that you need to fix something, and it's not a lot of it's not rocket science. I mean, I can take every supplement away and just say, okay, we're going to lower stress in your body. We're going to regiment your sleep. We're going to regiment your digestion. We're going to, maybe you even need to go get some like a therapist, have someone to talk to a little bit and bounce some, like
help relieve some stress. Yeah. For sure.
It's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Gain these habits, gain a new outlook, because what I'll get sometimes is they'll follow the plan and the protocol, but their mind the whole time is resisting it. It wants to do something else. So what are they doing? It's like cortisol.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
All the fucking time,
Yeah, just stressing themselves out more and more than they need to.
That's all it is.
Yeah. Man, to finish up, what I tend to do is I tend to ask just a basic question. I know you're sort of big on Instagram. So 3 accounts that you follow that sort of help you day to day, really. I mean, whether they make you a better coach, whether they just make you laugh, whether they help you de-stress, just 3 different accounts really that people could follow or should follow.
I'm so bad at this because people ask me, they ask me like, hey, who do you follow? Hey, what books do you read? Hey, I'm like,
yeah. Well, I'd normally say like, just 3 different people, but chances are probably the people that you learn from or have learned from probably aren't on Instagram. So most of the listeners are on
some of the originals.
That's where I get mine. People like they ask, this is where I developed the question from, because I get asked the question. I'm like, oh, the people that I've learned from, they're not on Instagram. So
yeah, that's true. Okay. So 3 people or 3 accounts. Yeah. I do like, you said, humor and stress relief. So there is some funny stuff that I like. And the funny thing is I'm like the least like bro douchey bodybuilder ever.
Yeah.
Not at all. 0. But I find some of that stuff funny. So like, I like the Gains account. I think they're hilarious.
Yeah.
I laugh at all this shit, even though it's so far away from the way that I am.
Yeah. It's still hilarious. I agree with you.
Yeah. I still think it's funny. I like watching people cook steak. That's like a weird fetish of mine. So Guga Foods is awesome. If you guys ever seen Guga Foods, the guys like,
I haven't, no. Yeah.
No, they just cook, like they just do experiments with steak. So I've been on a steak kick and trying to learn how to cook steak better.
Yeah, fair.
So, but I'll tell you the other person, and I'm trying to think. He is on YouTube and he's sprinkled around, but mostly on other people's accounts. My doctor, Dr. Serrano, has been amazing for me over the years and helping me understand like feedback loops and things on a deeper level and make connections. So I'm not going to say anything. I'm not saying he's probably not someone that's like PED advice or something like that. But as far as like understanding the body and health concerns and things, you find anything from him, that's probably good. And he's sprinkled on, he's on my account. You'll find videos from him. Before, he was really good friends with John, who's passed away recently. And so he's on John's YouTube channel, which I'm sure is still up and people are, following it.
Clicking it,
So stuff from Eric is good for the most part. A lot of really cool stuff from him. I've learned a lot. So I know that's probably
like I said, every that question seems to throw everybody off. It's like, 3 accounts. And it's like, when you think about it too, like you probably follow like at least a couple of thousand people. And it's like 3 out of that few thousand that you probably see day to day. It's always interesting to see people's reaction.
I was trying to think if there was like like accounts that I gain like a lot of insight or something from. And I'm bad. I'm really bad. So I'm on social media and I post a lot, but the thing is I kind of post and I just get off.
Yeah. That's completely fair.
I generally don't like sit and scroll.
Yeah. No, that's fair enough, man. You are a very busy man, so that makes sense. Where can people find you?
Yeah. So social media is fine. So my socials are Facebook, Austin Stout, you'll see I've got some kind of bodybuilding posing picture, I think. So no. I don't. I have a funny picture on there now. It's a guy trying to stab another guy with a fish. So you'll see that photo on there.
There you go.
Yeah, it's random. It's from a movie. It's an American movie. Have you seen the movie Grumpy Old Men?
I don't think I have, and I've actually seen quite a few movies. I've heard of it. I just haven't seen it.
Watch it. It's 90
add on for the weekend.
Well, you're kind of an angry, sarcastic person. You'll thoroughly enjoy this movie. It's so funny. It's basically.
I look forward to it.
Yeah. So Facebook, Austin Stout. Instagram, I am at Austin ST, then the number 8.
Yep.
Easiest way to find me is you go to one of those accounts. In my bio, I have a link tree. So you can find YouTube,
easy,
email, website, like it's all there. Yeah.
Easy done. Well,
Podcast,
thanks.
All that shit.
Perfect. Thanks for jumping on, my man. I really appreciate it. And hopefully the listeners appreciate it as much as I do. If anything, I got something out of it. So that works for me.
There you go.
And I will definitely catch up and hear from you soon, my man.
All righty. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. See you, buddy.